My name is Jessica Hummel. I'm 30 years old. The week my family chose which daughter was worth saving started on a Thursday night. My sister was arrested on a Thursday night. By Friday, my parents had emptied their savings to get her out. 3 days later, my surgeon told me that if we delayed my surgery any longer, I might lose my chance to have children. My father looked at me and said, "Heather can't get through this alone. You can." My mother nodded. "Then handle it alone." I said, "Understood." 7 days later, a nurse opened my discharge paperwork and read, "Emergency contact, Olivia Mercer." My mother's face changed instantly. She wasn't my emergency contact anymore. She wasn't my medical proxy. She wasn't listed anywhere that mattered. What my parents didn't know was that my grandmother had made her own decision 4 years earlier, and in 10 days, they were going to hear it in her own words. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. I need to tell you how I got here, not because I want sympathy, because the pattern matters. I was 12 the first time I understood my place in the family hierarchy. Heather was 8. She broke an expensive vase in the living room, the crystal one my grandmother had given my mother for her wedding. I was at school. I came home to my mother standing in the kitchen with the pieces wrapped in newspaper. "Jessica," she said, "you're old enough to know better than to let your sister near that vase. You should have been watching her." I was at school. I said this. My mother's expression didn't change. "You should have reminded her before you left." I was grounded for a week. My allowance, $5 a week that I'd been saving for a bike, was docked to pay for the vase. That afternoon, my father took Heather for ice cream because she was upset about the accident. I learned early, when something broke, I was responsible, even when I wasn't there. At 16, I worked part-time at a grocery store, saving for college. I'd accumulated $1,850 over 2 years. Heather was 12 and going through what my parents called a tough time socially. She wanted an iPhone, the expensive one. My parents couldn't afford it. My father sat me down at the kitchen table. "We need to borrow $320 from your college fund. Just temporarily. Heather's struggling. She needs this. You understand, right? We'll pay you back next month when my contract comes through." I gave them the money. Next month became next year, became never. Heather got her phone. I kept working. When I was 19, I was accepted into a semester abroad program in Ireland. It cost $6,500, but I'd saved enough. I'd worked since I was 16 for this. Trinity College, Dublin. 4 months studying literature in a country I'd dreamed about since I was a child. Heather was 15. She got caught with marijuana at school. Not just possession, enough that the school called the police. My parents needed $4,000 for a lawyer to keep it off her permanent record. My mother called me at my dorm. "Ireland will always be there. Your sister's future is on the line right now. You've always been the strong one, Jessica. We need you." I withdrew from the program on March 15, 2014. I gave them $4,000. Heather's charges were reduced to probation. She thanked me by telling her friends I was being dramatic about missing a trip. I told myself I'd go to Ireland later. I never did. The vocabulary became familiar. "You're so capable. Heather's fragile. You understand, right? You've always had the strength your sister doesn't. That's a gift. Don't waste it." I was the responsible one. Heather was the one who needed help. It wasn't malicious. It was just fact. The way my father explained it, some people were built to handle pressure, and some people needed protection from it. I was built to handle it. Between 18 and 24, I estimate I gave or loaned my parents approximately $12,000. All of it went to Heather's various crises: legal fees, car repairs after she wrecked the Honda my parents bought her for her 16th birthday, rent when she lost jobs, which happened often because showing up consistently wasn't her vibe. None of it was ever repaid. By the time my grandmother Clara got sick, I'd been training for years. I just didn't know what I was training for. It started in the spring of 2019. Clara was 82. She began forgetting appointments, asking the same question 3 times in 10 minutes. At first, we thought it was normal aging. Then she called my father at 2 in the morning, asking why nobody had picked her up from church. It was Wednesday. There was no church on Wednesday. She'd been standing outside in her nightgown for 20 minutes before a neighbor found her. The neurologist said early-stage Alzheimer's. Progressive, irreversible. My parents called a family meeting at their house on a Saturday afternoon in April. My father worked full-time as a contractor. My mother claimed she couldn't emotionally handle watching her mother-in-law decline. Heather was 20, working part-time retail between finding herself and exploring her options. Everyone's eyes turned to me. I was 24. I'd just gotten a job doing medical billing for a hospital system. It was remote work 3 days a week. Flexible schedule. Good insurance. Jessica, my father said, your schedule is the most flexible. And you've always been good with Grandma, she trusts you. Nobody asked if I wanted to do it. Nobody discussed payment, or rotation, or what support would look like. The meeting lasted 30 minutes. By the end of it, I was Clara's primary caregiver. I said yes because I loved her. I didn't know I was saying yes to the next 4 years of my life. The first year wasn't terrible. Clara was still relatively independent. I drove her to doctor's appointments twice a week. I managed her medications, filling a weekly pill organizer every Sunday night and calling her every evening to make sure she'd taken them. I installed grab bars in her bathroom. I labeled the cabinets in her kitchen because she'd started forgetting where things went. Plates, cups, the sugar bowl she'd had since 1968. I was 24, 25. I still had a social life. I went on dates. I saw friends on weekends. Heather visited Clara maybe 6 times that year, usually staying less than an hour before she claimed she had somewhere else to be. My calendar from 2019 shows 156 documented caregiver hours. Heather's visits totaled approximately 5 hours. Then Clara forgot my name for the first time. I was helping her sort through old photographs one afternoon in late 2020. She looked up at me, her hands full of black and white pictures of people I didn't recognize, and said, "You're very kind to help me, dear. What did you say your name was?" Something broke in me that I didn't know how to fix. Year 2, the decline accelerated. Clara started forgetting where she was. Sometimes she didn't recognize my father when he visited. I began staying overnight at her house 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. I'd pack a bag every Sunday, drive to her house after work, and sleep on her couch so I could make sure she didn't wander in the middle of the night. I was dating someone. Daniel. He was 27, worked as an accountant, wanted weekends together and vacations, and the kind of commitment I couldn't give him because I was spending 60% of my time in my grandmother's house making sure she didn't hurt herself. We broke up in August 2020. He said, "I love you, Jess, but I can't compete with this. You're exhausted all the time, and you won't let me help because it's family responsibility." He wasn't wrong. I chose Clara. I'd make the same choice again. But I didn't know what it would cost me. That fall, Clara had an episode. 3 in the morning, she unlocked her front door and walked outside in her nightgown. A neighbor 2 houses down found her standing in the middle of the street, confused and shivering. He called me. I drove to Clara's house at 3:30 in the morning and found her sitting in the neighbor's living room wrapped in a blanket, asking where her mother was. Her mother had died in 1991. I spent $2,100 of my own money installing door alarms, motion sensors, and extra locks that needed keys she couldn't find on her own. My parents contributed nothing. Heather visited 4 times that year, maybe 3 hours total. Year 3, Clara needed 24-hour supervision. Medicare covered 20 hours a week of home health care. I handled the other 148 hours, nights, weekends, holidays. I essentially moved into Clara's house, going back to my own apartment only to shower and do laundry. In October 2022, I got a job offer in Denver. $72,000 a year, nearly $25,000 more than I was making. Career advancement, a city I'd always wanted to live in. I turned it down because no one else could take care of Grandma. My parents visited once a week for 30 minutes. Heather came twice that year. Both times she spent most of the visit on her phone. My calendar shows 468 documented hours in 2022 alone. I stopped counting Heather's hours because they didn't add up to anything that mattered. Clara had lucid moments, fewer and fewer, but they still happened. One afternoon in the summer of 2023, she was sitting in her rocking chair by the window, and I was reading to her from a book she used to love. She reached over and took my hand. "Jessica, honey," she said, clear as day. "I don't always remember your name anymore, but I remember you never left me. That's enough." I held her hand and didn't say anything because if I'd opened my mouth, I would have fallen apart. Some nights Clara would hold my hand and call me by her sister's name. I didn't correct her. At least she felt safe. Year 4 started in January 2024. Clara entered the final stage. She was mostly nonverbal by then. She recognized faces sometimes, but not names. In October, hospice care began. I took FMLA, leave from work, to be there full-time. I read to her even though I don't know if she understood the words. I played her favorite music. I held her hand. She died at 11:43 p.m. on November 14th, 2024. I was sitting next to her bed, holding her hand, when her breathing stopped. My parents arrived at 11:58, 15 minutes after she was gone. Heather was in Kansas City at a concert. She didn't come home until 3 days later for the funeral planning. At the funeral, Heather cried loudly. People hugged her and told her how hard this must be. I didn't cry at all. I'd done all my crying in the 4 years before, when no one was watching. My father stood at my grandmother's grave and said, "I'm glad you were with her, Jessie. You were always her favorite." I wanted to say, I was the only one who showed up, but I didn't. I said, "She loved all of us." I'd documented 1,247 hours of caregiving over 4 years. I'd spent $6,200 of my own money on her care. Medical supplies, groceries, home modifications. Things insurance didn't cover and my parents said they couldn't afford. Heather's total visits over 4 years, approximately 10, maybe 15 hours combined. That still wasn't the part that broke me. 3 weeks after the funeral, the pain started getting worse. I'd had pelvic pain for years. Manageable. Ibuprofen-level pain. I assumed it was stress. Grief. The physical toll of caregiving. I took over-the-counter painkillers and kept working. By late December 2025, it wasn't manageable anymore. It was constant. Stabbing. On bad days, a 7 out of 10 that made it hard to sit at my desk. My best friend Olivia, who's a nurse at a different hospital, looked at me over coffee one Saturday and said, "Jess, you look gray. When's the last time you saw a doctor for yourself?" I'd missed my annual physical in 2023 and 2024. I'd spent 4 years managing medications and symptoms for someone else. I'd forgotten I had a body that could break too. I made an appointment with Dr. Sarah Morrison, an OB/GYN, for December 19th. The pelvic exam was excruciating. She ordered an ultrasound. When the images came back, she sat me down in her office and pulled up the scans on her computer screen. "Jessica," she said, "this is severe. You have stage 3, possibly stage 4 endometriosis, multiple ovarian cysts, extensive adhesions. You need laparoscopic surgery soon. If we wait, you risk torsion, rupture, or permanent fertility damage." I stared at the black and white images on the screen. "How soon?" "Within the next 3 weeks, ideally sooner." "What happens if we wait longer?" She looked at me directly. "You're 30 years old. If you want biological children someday, we need to address this now. Every month we delay increases the risk of damage we can't reverse." I drove home in silence. At 30, I'd given up relationships for caregiving. I'd turned down career advancement. I'd deferred my own life for 4 years. Now my body was asking if I'd given up motherhood too. The surgery was scheduled for January 6th, 2026. The estimated out-of-pocket cost after insurance was $14,500, spread over the following 6 months. surgery, follow-up appointments, possible additional procedures depending on what they found. I needed someone to drive me to and from the hospital. Someone to stay with me the first night in case there were complications. Someone to help with basic tasks for 2 to 3 weeks while I recovered. On December 20th, I called my parents. My father sounded distracted when he answered. I told him about the diagnosis, the surgery, the timeline. He asked, "Is it urgent, or can it wait a few weeks?" "Dad, the doctor said if we delay, I might lose my ability to have children." Right, okay. Well, 3 weeks is plenty of time to figure it out. Your mother and I will see what we can work out with our schedules. My mother got on the phone. Honey, we'll do what we can, but you know how your father's schedule is, and Heather's been going through a lot. We'll see. The call lasted 8 minutes. They made vague promises, no concrete plans. I hung up and stared at my phone. Olivia's name was right there in my contacts, but I'd been trained to ask family first. 3 days later, that training would cost me something I couldn't get back. I spent late December researching endometriosis surgery, reading about fertility outcomes, complication rates. I saw stories of women who lost ovaries, women who needed emergency hysterectomies, women who woke up and heard the word irreversible. I called Dr. Morrison with questions. Would I still be able to have kids? She was honest. It depended on what they found during surgery. But every month of delay increased the risk. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of waking up and hearing the word irreversible. I'd already given my family so much. Time, money, relationships, career opportunities. Adding my fertility to that list felt different. It felt like theft. Thursday, January 2nd, 2026, 9:15 p.m. My phone rang, my mother's name on the screen. I answered. She was frantic. "Jessica, it's Heather. She's been arrested." Heather had been drinking at a restaurant with friends. She drove home despite being well over the legal limit. On the way, she struck 2 parked cars, panicked, and drove away. A pedestrian nearby sustained minor injuries. The restaurant had security cameras. The police used the license plate to track her to my parents' house and arrested her 90 minutes later. DUI, hit and run. This was Heather's third DUI. She'd had one in 2022, another in 2023. I didn't know about those until later. "The bail is $45,000, my mother said. "We don't have that kind of money. Can you help?" I had $19,000 in savings. My surgery was in 4 days. Medical bills were coming. "I can't, Mom. I have surgery Monday and my own medical expenses." There was a long silence. Then my mother said something I'd never heard before. "Then we'll have to figure it out ourselves." She hung up. I sat on my couch holding my phone for 20 minutes. Something felt wrong, off balance. I couldn't name it yet. The next day, Friday, January 3rd, I was at work when I got a text from my father. "Went to bank, emptying savings, borrowing from Jerry, getting Heather out tonight." I texted back, "What about my surgery Monday?" 3 hours passed. Finally, "We'll talk about that later. Don't worry so much." My parents had $38,000 in savings. They withdrew all of it. They borrowed $7,000 from my Uncle Jerry, my father's younger brother. $45,000 total. They posted Heather's bail that night. That same night, Heather posted on Instagram from my parents' guest room. The photo was a selfie of her looking tearful but grateful. The caption said, "Grateful for family that never gives up on me," with praying hands and heart emojis. I stared at that heart emoji for a long time. Saturday, January 4th. I texted my parents asking if they could still drive me to my pre-op appointment Monday. No response. I called in the afternoon. My father answered. He sounded exhausted. "We're dealing with Heather's situation," he said. "Everything is chaos right now. Her arraignment is Monday morning. I don't know what our schedule will look like. Can you be there for my surgery? I need someone to drive me home. We're waiting to hear about her court schedule." "We'll try, Jess. Heather's a mess. She's talking about, we're worried about her mental state. We need to focus on getting her through this." The call lasted 6 minutes. No concrete commitment. My surgery was 36 hours away. I didn't argue. Arguing meant being selfish. So I said okay and hung up. Sunday, January 5th. I sent a reminder text at 10 a.m. Pre-op appointment tomorrow, 10 a.m. Surgery, Tuesday, 7 a.m. Please let me know if you can make it. The response came at 2:43 p.m. from my mother. Sweetheart, we're at the lawyer's office with Heather. This is taking longer than we thought. Can Olivia take you? We'll try to visit during recovery. You've always been so independent. We know you can handle this. Heather physically cannot handle jail. You understand the difference, right? I understood. I'd always understood. That was the problem. Monday, January 6th, 10:15 a.m. I was at my pre-op appointment, alone. Olivia was at work but would pick me up after. The nurse asked about my support system for recovery. I said my family was dealing with an emergency but I had friends helping. After the appointment, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot. It was 28 degrees outside. I didn't turn on the heat. I called my parents. My father answered on the third ring. Dad, I said, and my voice was shaking slightly. I'm scared. This is happening tomorrow. I need to know. Are you coming? He sighed. It was a sound I'd heard my whole life. The sound of me being the problem that required patience. Jessica, I need you to listen to me. If one of you is falling apart right now, it has to be Heather. She can't survive this. You can handle your own surgery. You've always been stronger. We've given everything we have to get her out of jail. You're going to have to handle this yourself. My mother's voice in the background. Tell her we love her. We'll visit when we can. My father added, Your mother says we love you. We'll visit during recovery. The call lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. After I hung up, I sat in my car for 38 minutes without moving. When I finally started the engine, my hands weren't shaking anymore. Something had gone cold inside me. Something permanent. Monday night, 8:30 p.m. I called Olivia. She picked up on the first ring. Hey, how was pre-op? I told her everything. The arrest, the bail, the emptied savings, my father's words. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I'm taking you to surgery and staying with you. No discussion. I already requested PTO for Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm picking you up at 5:30 a.m. You're staying at my place the first 2 nights, so someone's there if anything goes wrong. We clear? I started crying. Not from fear, from relief, from being chosen. Jess, she said, her voice firm but gentle. Listen to me. They've been conditioning you your whole life to accept scraps. I'm not scraps. I'm your family, the one you chose. Now let me show up for you the way they never did. We talked for 52 minutes. She had a plan. She'd already thought through everything. Medication schedule, ice packs, what food I'd be able to tolerate, how to manage pain. She'd done this before, she said. She was a nurse. She knew what recovery looked like. That night I couldn't sleep. But it wasn't from fear of surgery. It was from the decision forming in my mind. Cold and clear as January ice. Tuesday, January 7th, 2 p.m., 1 day before surgery. I called Daniel Porter, the estate attorney who'd handled my grandmother's will. I explained the situation. My parents had abandoned me during a medical crisis. I wanted them removed from all legal and medical authority over my life. He didn't hesitate. Jessica, I handled your grandmother's estate. I saw how much you did for her. What you're doing now isn't revenge. It's self-preservation. Let me help you. We scheduled a meeting for Wednesday afternoon. His consultation fee was $200. He said he'd have 6 forms ready for me to sign. He asked if I was sure. I said yes. For the first time in my life, I didn't second-guess protecting myself. Wednesday, January 8th, 3:45 p.m. I sat in Daniel Porter's office and signed documents that would erase my parents from my legal life. Emergency contact change form, removing Lawrence and Diane Hummel, adding Olivia Mercer, healthcare proxy revocation, removing my parents as medical decision-makers, new medical power of attorney. Designating Olivia Mercer as the person authorized to make medical decisions if I became incapacitated. HIPAA authorization revocation. My parents would no longer have access to my medical records. Beneficiary change forms for my 401k and life insurance policy. Removing my parents. Designating Olivia Mercer and the American Cancer Society. Updated advance directive with clear instructions about end-of-life care. 23 pages total. Daniel notarized every signature. He made copies. He submitted the forms to the hospital, my employer's HR department, and my insurance company. As he handed me a folder of copies, he said, "Keep these safe. If they ask questions, don't explain, don't justify. Just say these are your legal documents and they're final." I walked out of that office at 4:30 p.m. with a folder full of papers that said what I'd never been able to say out loud. You don't get to control my life anymore. Thursday, January 9th. I called my parents one final time before surgery. I told them surgery was the next day. Olivia was taking me. My mother sounded relieved. "Oh, good. We were so worried about who would help you. That's wonderful that Olivia can do it. We knew you'd figure it out. You always do." They promised vaguely to visit during recovery when things calmed down with Heather. The call lasted 3 minutes and 20 seconds. I said okay, but it was the last okay I would ever give them. Friday, January 10th. 5:45 a.m. Olivia picked me up. We drove to Riverside Medical Center in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, the kind of silence that means someone is with you, and that's enough. The pre-op nurse reviewed my paperwork. She saw Olivia listed as emergency contact and medical power of attorney. No questions. This was normal. Surgery started at 8 a.m., 3 hours. When I woke up in recovery at 11:15, Olivia was sitting in the chair next to my bed. "Hey," she said, "surgery went well. Your right ovary is a fighter. Doctor saved it. You're going to be okay." The surgeon came in later to explain. Severe stage 4 endometriosis, extensive adhesions. They'd removed multiple cysts and as much endometrial tissue as possible. My right ovary was partially damaged but preserved. My left ovary was healthy. Fertility was still possible, but would require monitoring. My parents didn't call, didn't text, didn't send flowers. That afternoon, Heather posted an Instagram story. It was a photo of a latte with the caption, "Self-Care Saturday," coffee cup emoji. It was Friday, and I'd just had surgery. But sure, self-care. I spent 7 days at Olivia's apartment. She took care of me the way family should. Changed my bandages, made sure I took medications on time, brought me soup I could actually keep down, let me sleep when I needed to, watched bad television with me when I couldn't sleep. On day 4, my parents called. My mother asked how I was doing. I said fine. She said they were still dealing with Heather's legal situation, but they'd visit soon. I said, okay, and hung up. On day 7, my mother texted, "Dad and I are coming to your follow-up appointment today. Want to see how you're doing?" I didn't respond. They showed up anyway. January 17th, 2026. 7 days post-surgery. 9 a.m. Olivia drove me to my follow-up appointment at the hospital outpatient clinic. Wound check. Discharge paperwork review. Standard post-op. My mother texted at 8:15. "Dad and I coming to appointment. Want to see how you're doing?" They arrived at 9 with a grocery store bouquet. $12 if I had to guess. My mother tried to hug me. I stepped back. "I'm still sore." She smiled at the nurse checking me in. "It's so hard when your children go through medical emergencies. But we're here now." The nurse nodded politely. She had no idea what was about to happen. Nurse Emily brought me into the exam room. My parents followed, assuming they were included. She asked, "Would you like privacy for this exam?" "Yes," I said. "Just me and Olivia." My mother looked confused. My father said, "We're her parents." Nurse Emily's voice stayed polite but firm. "The patient has the right to determine who's present during medical exams." My father started to say something. Nurse Emily looked at me. I looked back and said, "Just Olivia." My mother's smile disappeared. After the exam, everything was healing well. Nurse Emily reviewed discharge paperwork, standard procedure. She read aloud key information for me to confirm. Medication list, activity restrictions, follow-up appointments scheduled. Then she reached the emergency contact section. "Okay, Jessica," she read from the computer screen, clear and professional. "Confirming your emergency contact information. Primary contact is Olivia Mercer, phone number ending in 3982. Medical power of attorney, Olivia Mercer. Healthcare proxy, Olivia Mercer. Next of kin for medical decision-making, Olivia Mercer." Is all of that still correct? My mother was sitting in the corner chair. I watched her posture go rigid. "Yes," I said. "That's correct." Nurse Emily made notes in the system. She had no idea she'd just detonated a bomb. She left to get discharge instructions. The door closed. My mother stood up. "What was that? Olivia is your emergency contact? What about us? We're your parents." I kept my voice level. "I changed my paperwork last week." My father leaned forward. "Without telling us?" "You told me to handle my own surgery. I did." My mother's face was flushing red. "Jessica Marie Hummel, you don't just remove your mother from medical records. How could you do this to us?" "I needed someone to take me to surgery, someone to stay with me, someone to help me recover. You said I could handle it myself. So I did. Olivia drove me. Olivia stayed with me. Olivia is the one who showed up. That's why her name is on the paperwork." My father stood. "This is because of Heather, isn't it? You're punishing us for helping your sister." I looked at him for a long moment. "I'd practiced this. You emptied your savings to bail out Heather. That's your choice. I needed someone for surgery. You said handle it alone. I did. Olivia was there. That's why her name is on the forms. This isn't punishment. This is accuracy." Nurse Emily came back with discharge papers. My mother tried to argue with her. "There must be a mistake. I'm her mother. I should be listed." Nurse Emily's tone stayed professional. "Ma'am, these forms are legally binding and were updated by the patient 6 days ago. I cannot change them without the patient's authorization." My mother looked at me. "Jessica, change it back." "No. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." She grabbed her purse. My father stood. They walked to the door. My mother turned back. "How could you do this to your own mother after everything we've sacrificed for you?" I didn't answer. They left. 20 minutes later, my phone vibrated. Text from my mother. "How could you do this to your own mother, after everything we've sacrificed for you?" I deleted it without responding. Olivia drove me to her apartment. I slept for 3 hours, the deepest sleep I'd had in 7 days. 3 days later, my father called. "We need to have a family meeting," he said. "Sunday at 2 p.m., it's about your grandmother's estate." I asked what specifically about the estate. He was vague. "The attorney says probate is almost done. We need to figure out how to handle distribution fairly. Everyone needs to be there." I knew exactly what this meant. I called Daniel Porter. He said, "Bring the will and Clara's letter. Let them read it themselves." Sunday, January 22nd, 2026. 1:55 p.m. I pulled up to my parents' house at 4826 Maple Street, the house I'd grown up in. I parked on the street and sat in my car for 2 minutes. I was deliberately late. I wanted them waiting. I brought a folder. Inside were 2 copies of my grandmother's will and 2 copies of the letter she'd written. I got out of the car, walked to the front door, rang the bell instead of using my key. I didn't live here anymore. I wouldn't pretend I did. My mother answered. "Jessica, come in, come in. Everyone's here." The living room was formal, stiff. My father sat in his armchair, the dad chair, the one no one else was allowed to sit in. My mother sat on the love seat. Heather sat next to her, quiet, avoiding my eyes. Uncle Jerry was on the couch. My father's younger brother, 58 years old, drove up from Des Moines. He looked confused about why he was here. Aunt Marianne sat next to him. My father's older sister. 61. She'd flown in from Scottsdale. There was a coffee service set up on the table, my mother playing host. I sat in the chair nearest the door, kept my coat on, folder in my lap. Uncle Jerry leaned over and whispered, "Do you know what this is about?" "They're going to ask me to give up Grandma's inheritance." His face went pale. My father cleared his throat. He'd prepared a speech. "Thank you all for coming. Mom's passing was hard on all of us. Now that probate is finishing up, we need to discuss her estate. The house, the savings. It's a significant amount. I think Mom would want us to handle this as a family, with fairness and love." He paused for effect. "Heather is going through a difficult time right now. Legal fees, therapy, getting back on her feet. Jessica is doing well, steady job, her own place, financially stable. I think the loving thing, the thing that honors Mom's memory, is to split the estate equally between the girls. Or maybe even give Heather a larger share since she needs it more." He'd been talking for 4 minutes. He mentioned my caregiving 0 times. He said the word fairness 6 times. My mother nodded throughout. Aunt Marianne interrupted. "Lawrence, have you actually read Mom's will?" My father ignored her. He pulled out a typed document. 2 pages. "I've prepared a family estate agreement. It proposes splitting Mom's estate equally, 82,000 each, with an option for Jessica to voluntarily contribute additional funds to Heather's legal defense, as a gesture of family support." He slid the paper across the coffee table toward me. I didn't touch it. I looked at the document for a long time. Then I asked, "Dad, when's the last time you visited Grandma before she died?" He blinked. "What? When did you last visit her? How many times did you stay overnight? How much money did you contribute to her care? How many doctor appointments did you drive her to?" He started to stammer. "I worked full-time, Jessica. I did what I could." "I worked full-time too. I was there for 4 years. Where were you?" I turned to Heather. "How many times did you visit Grandma while she was sick?" Heather's voice was defensive. "She didn't even know who I was. What was the point?" "The point was, she was dying and scared and alone. I was there. You weren't." My father's face was turning red. My mother said, "This isn't helpful. We're here to talk about the future, not the past." Uncle Jerry was listening intently, piecing things together. My father said, "None of that matters now. What matters is doing the right thing." I opened my folder. I pulled out the will, placed it on the coffee table. "This is Grandma's will. Would you like me to read the relevant section?" My father shifted. "I know there were some specifics, but we're family. We can work this out among ourselves." "Some specifics," I repeated. "Let me read them." I picked up the document. I read aloud, clearly. "Clara Marie Hummel, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath my entire estate, including my home located at 1847 Elm Street, Omaha, Nebraska, and all financial assets, to my granddaughter Jessica Marie Hummel." Silence. I continued. "I do not name Heather Lee Hummel as a beneficiary. I do not name Lawrence William Hummel as a beneficiary." My father's mouth opened. "She wasn't. Mom had Alzheimer's. She couldn't have been of sound mind when—" "The will is dated April 17th, 2024, 7 months before she died. During a period of documented lucidity, it was witnessed by her attorney, Daniel Porter, and her hospice nurse, Patricia Williams. It was notarized. It's legally binding." My mother found her voice. "You can contest this. We can contest this. She wasn't in her right mind." I pulled out Clara's letter. "Grandma left a letter. She wanted you to know why." I unfolded it. Handwritten, 3 pages. Clara's careful script. I read it aloud, slowly. "To my family. If you are hearing this, I am gone. I hope my final years were treated with dignity. I know they were, because I know who was there." I paused. Let that land. To my granddaughter Jessica, you gave me 4 years of your life when you should have been building your own. You drove me to appointments when I could no longer drive. You labeled my cabinets when I couldn't remember where the plates went. You held my hand through the long nights when I was confused and afraid. You never once made me feel like a burden. My voice stayed steady. This was evidence, not emotion. You sacrificed relationships because you stayed with me. You turned down a better job because you wouldn't leave me. You spent your own money to make my house safe when I couldn't afford it. You sat with me on the days I forgot your name, and you never stopped coming. Heather started crying, quietly. This house, this money, it's not a reward. It's recognition. You were the only one who saw me when I was disappearing. You gave me my dignity. This is for the life you deserve to build. I turned the page. To Lawrence, you're my son, and I love you. But you visited once a week for 30 minutes. You did your duty, not your heart. My father stared at the floor. To Heather, you're my granddaughter, and I wanted to know you. But you came 10 times in 4 years. When I reached for you, you pulled away. Heather's crying got louder. I was of sound mind when I wrote this in April of 2024. 2 doctors evaluated me and confirmed my competency. Jessica earned every cent. She earned it in hours, in presence, in love that cost her everything else. Do not contest this. Honor the one person who honored me. I set the letter down. Clara Marie Hummel, April 17th, 2024. The silence was absolute. Uncle Jerry's voice was rough. Jesus, Lawrence. My father tried to rally. Mom wasn't. She was confused toward the end. She didn't understand. Jerry cut him off. I talked to her in May of 2024, month after she wrote that. She was sharp as ever. She knew exactly what she was doing. My mother tried a different angle. Jessica, this is going to tear our family apart. What family? I asked. The one that told me to handle my own surgery? The one that's been using me as a backup plan my whole life? My father leaned forward. We've always been there for you. No, you've always assumed I'd be there for you. There's a difference. I looked at my father directly. Dad, you left me a voicemail 3 days ago. You said Clara would want me to do the decent thing. Well, she told you herself what she wanted, and it wasn't this. Heather finally spoke. Her voice was bitter. Fine, keep it all. I hope it was worth losing your family over. I stood. It hurt. I was still recovering from surgery, but I stood. You can contest the will if you want. Daniel Porter is the estate attorney. He told me it would cost you about $15,000 in legal fees and you'd lose. Clara documented everything. She was evaluated by 2 doctors confirming her mental competency. The will is final, ironclad. My father stood too. If you walk out that door, then I walk out. I've been walking out of this family for years. This is just the first time I'm being honest about it. I picked up my folder, headed for the door. I turned back. I gave Grandma 4 years because I loved her. She left me her estate because she saw me. That's more than any of you ever did. Uncle Jerry stood. I'll walk you out, Jessica. We left together. In the driveway, he looked at me. His eyes were wet. Your grandmother was right about you. I'm sorry we weren't. I sat in his truck for 10 minutes, shaking, not from fear, from the weight of a lifetime finally lifting. I'd spent 30 years earning their approval. It took one letter from a dead woman to realize I'd already had the only approval that mattered. The days after blurred together. My phone vibrated constantly. Texts from my mother. 27 messages over 8 days. How could you do this to your own mother? After everything we've done for you. Your grandmother would be ashamed. Think about what you're doing to this family. I didn't respond to any of them. On day 9, I blocked their numbers. Heather sent one text. Hope you're happy alone. I deleted it. Uncle Jerry called every Sunday at 7 p.m. to check in. He'd tried to talk to my father. My father said I'd betrayed the family. Jerry told him that was bullshit. They weren't speaking now either. Aunt Marianne sent a card. It arrived January 28th. Inside was $100 bill and a note. Your grandmother was right about you. Buy yourself something nice. Love, Aunt M. On January 30th, Daniel Porter called. Your parents didn't contest the will. The deadline passed. Estate distribution is final. The house and accounts are yours. I said thank you and hung up. Then I sat on Olivia's couch and cried for an hour. Not from sadness. From something I couldn't name yet. Relief, maybe, or grief for the family I'd never actually had. Early February, I went back to work part-time. Medical billing from home. 3 days a week to start. My coworkers knew I'd had surgery, but nothing about the family situation. Work was grounding, normal, a place where competence was rewarded, not exploited. I started therapy on a Wednesday afternoon, $80 a session, sliding scale. My therapist was a woman in her 50s named Catherine, who specialized in family estrangement and caregiver burnout. Third session, she said, "You weren't the strong one. You were the parentified child. There's a difference." Something clicked into place. She diagnosed me with complex PTSD from long-term emotional abuse and caregiver burnout. We started working through it. Slowly. She asked if I felt guilty about keeping the inheritance. I said no. She asked what I did feel. I said seen. Mid-February, I met with a realtor about Clara's house. 1847 Elm Street. 3 bedrooms, needed updating. Worth approximately $126,000. The realtor asked if I wanted to renovate and live there. I realized I didn't. Too many memories, too much caregiving trauma. The house smelled like dying, no matter how much I cleaned it. I decided to sell. Use the money for a fresh start. I started looking in the Dundee neighborhood. Younger area, walkable, coffee shops, trees. A place that felt like beginning, not ending. I found a house in late February, 2216 Underwood Avenue. 2 bedrooms, craftsman style, hardwood floors, needed minor work but it had good bones. $185,000. I made an offer on February 18th. Down payment, $37,000 from the inheritance. 30-year mortgage. Affordable on my salary. The day I signed the purchase agreement, Olivia opened champagne in her living room. We toasted to new beginnings. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably my parents calling from someone else's phone. I deleted the voicemail without listening. March 8th, 2026, moving day. Olivia took the day off work. Uncle Jerry drove up from Des Moines. Aunt Marianne flew in from Scottsdale. 2 coworkers I'd become friends with showed up with a truck. The house was small but bright. Morning light filled the kitchen. Hardwood floors creaked in a friendly way. It smelled like possibility. I brought a few things from Clara's estate. Her brass reading lamp. I put it in the living room next to the couch. Her wooden wall clock, handmade by her father in the 1940s. I hung it in the kitchen. Her recipe box, the one with handwritten cards for lemon cake and pot roast and Christmas cookies. I put it in the cabinet, unopened. Too soon. Everything else went to an estate sale. That night we ordered pizza. $43. Jerry paid. We sat on the floor because my furniture wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. We talked about Clara's good years, before the Alzheimer's, when she was sharp and funny and made the world's best apple pie. At midnight, as Jerry was leaving, he hugged me. Your grandmother would love this place. She'd love that you built it yourself. After everyone left, I stood in my kitchen, in my house. Clara's clock ticked on the wall. Steady, constant, moving forward. I slept in my own house for the first time that night. 9 hours straight, no emergency calls, no one asking me to handle something. No crises that belonged to people who'd never handle mine. Just sleep, just peace. 6 months later. August 17th, 2026. Life had settled into something that felt like mine. The house felt like home. I'd painted the bedroom a soft gray, planted tomatoes and herbs in the backyard, learning as I went. Half of them died. The other half thrived. That felt appropriate. My health was improving. Monthly check-ins with Dr. Morrison, fertility monitoring. The prognosis was cautiously optimistic. The surgery had worked. I might still be able to have children someday. Might. It was better than irreversible. Work was going well. I'd applied for a supervisor position in the billing department. The interview was next week. Therapy was helping. Catherine and I had been working through the parentification, the caregiver trauma, the decades of being told my worth was measured by what I could give. Slowly, I was learning I didn't have to earn love. I could just be loved. It was a strange feeling. But I was getting used to it. I'd joined 2 support groups online, one for estranged adult children, one for former family caregivers. I'd made friends, people who understood without me having to explain. I was dating casually, nothing serious, no pressure, just learning what it felt like to be with someone who didn't need me to fix them. My parents had sent one letter in July. Uncle Jerry delivered it. He looked apologetic when he handed it to me. The letter said, "When you're ready to apologize and heal this family, we're here." I didn't respond. I didn't plan to. It was Saturday morning, August 17th. I was in my kitchen making coffee. Clara's clock ticked on the wall. Olivia came over at 10. She had a key now. Chosen family privilege. We sat in the living room with coffee and pastries from the bakery on the corner. Morning light came through the windows. Clara's lamp glowed warm next to the couch. Olivia asked, "Do you ever regret it, cutting them off?" I thought about it, really thought. I regret that it took me 30 years to realize love shouldn't feel like debt. She nodded. We drank our coffee. Later that afternoon, I stood in my kitchen looking at Clara's recipe box. I'd been in the house 6 months and I still hadn't opened it. I opened it. Inside were recipe cards. Handwritten. Decades old. Flour-stained. Her lemon cake. Her pot roast. Her Christmas cookies. The things she'd made with love when her hands still remembered how. Underneath the cards, folded small, was a piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a note, addressed to me, in Clara's handwriting. "Jessica, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I won't be there to see what you build with the life I'm giving you, but I know it will be beautiful, because you are. Build a life I would have been proud to see. You already earned it. You gave me dignity when I was losing everything else. You gave me love when I couldn't remember my own name. You stayed when everyone else left. This inheritance isn't payment. It's permission. Permission to choose yourself. Permission to build something that's yours. Permission to love people who love you back without conditions. You don't owe anyone your pain. You don't owe anyone your future. You gave me 4 years. Give yourself the rest. I love you. I see you. I always did." Grandma Clara. I stood in my kitchen holding the note, crying, not from sadness, from something bigger than grief and smaller than joy, from being seen by someone who was already gone. I made her lemon cake that afternoon, from her recipe, in my kitchen, with my hands. It tasted like forgiveness. It tasted like freedom. It tasted like home. My grandmother didn't leave me a reward. She left me proof that love that costs you something still counts. And sometimes the people who see you best are the ones who remember you, even when they're forgetting everything else. My name is Jessica Hummel. I'm 30 years old, and for the first time in my life, I belong to myself.